back a little bit to graduation. Or maybe a crucial moment in your life, maybe a point of transition. Does anybody remember their moment in life where you graduated high school? Okay, so a couple of you. Okay, what about when you got your first job as a teenager? Maybe when something new happened. I remember when I got my driver's license. It was a huge deal for me, a huge deal. I was 16, and I had just turned 16. I planned it out. I got it like the second. I turned 16 on the 7th, and I think I got it on the 8th because I was so eager and excited to have my license and have a transition in life. Have something big happen. Have something knowing that my life would be different from this point forward. It was a transition moment. You ever had those before in your life? Every one of us have it, and maybe there's a specific point. Maybe you're in a transition point right now. And those are amazing moments where you think of, hey, I get to do things different from this moment on, or things get to happen different. I got a new job. I'm living in a new place or an old place, which is the new place now for you guys, and a new job and new situations and new stepping out in faith. And everybody's got something new where you can say, I get to choose to do something different from this point on. And kind of our title in our message series is A Graduation in Gratitude. A graduation in gratitude, where we can say, hey, I've moved on from this aspect of gratitude, and now I can learn to express it in this way or be grateful in this way. And we kind of use the example of the tables. And so this is what kind of table is this? This is a what table? All right, kiddie table. All right, thank you. You guys are great. So this is a kiddie table, and we all kind of start out here. We all kind of start out eating at the kiddie table. And I remember having to eat here. Maybe you have this in your home. Maybe you've seen this before. You've been to a Thanksgiving gathering like many of you will have on Thursday, or not. You'll do it virtual. That's fine too. But there's a kid table where the kids start, and it gets a little messy, but it's the beginning of our gratitude in how we're looking at it today. So this table we talked about last week, and this is the for the table. This is the thankful for the table. And we learned a little bit about not just the attitude of positivity. What's that? Not just the practice or the attitude of gratitude, but learning to be practicing gratitude, right? Because you can have an attitude of fitness, but it not be an actual practice of fitness, right? Many of us will this week not work out because it's Thanksgiving. And I'm not working out this week probably because it's Thanksgiving, right? I got to eat and have some fun. So instead of the attitude of gratitude, which sounds good and is similar, we want to learn the practice of gratitude. So last week we learned about for the. We're grateful for them. We learned 3 points. Like, what do you see first? What do we see first? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I can be ungrateful for what I don't have. You watch that video and it's like, hey, he's thankful for his meal. And I'm like, just mad that my toast is burnt. Or I'm just frustrated that my car's not running like it should, or it needs new tires, or it needs this fixed, or it needs this fixed, or I had to pay a bunch of money on this. And so I'm not thankful for what I see first. Am I thankful first, or am I thankful last in what I'm looking at my life? So that's for the. We learned, what do we see first? What do we say? What are we talking about? And we talked about a little bit about sometimes I say things and my kids repeat them, and then I'm like, did I just seriously say that? Because that is not probably what I should be saying. What do we say? Are we a grateful person from our mouth? Because I would argue that gratitude not expressed is not true gratitude. That's why we come in and praise God, because what are we saying to people in our lives? When was the last time you said thank you to your spouse? When was the last time you said thank you to your coworker? When was the last time you said thank you to those people in your life? And then finally, what do we show? What do we do with our hands and our feet? What are we showing? Are we showing this attitude of gratitude? Are we just having an attitude of gratitude? Because I can be thankful that my wife takes care of the kids all the time and does so much work for our family, but if I don't ever say it or show it, she never experiences it, and then gratitude is not ever shown, and then she feels unappreciated, and it's just a spiral downwards. And is it that way with God? Are we seeing, saying, and showing our gratitude to Him? And so this week we're going to learn our graduation in gratitude. And sometimes let me tell you this, we don't have to feel grateful to be grateful. It's oftentimes with me, I don't feel grateful, but I need to learn to be grateful. And so that's kind of the beginning of gratitude. This is the for the table. But then we move on, and there's more to it than just being thankful for what we have. But what about this? In Habakkuk it says this, but this, well, in a second we'll get to Habakkuk. But this is the even though table. And look in Habakkuk. Chapter 3 and verse 17, and this is the prophet, and he's kind of frustrated with God, and he's honestly praying, saying, do I have an answer for this? Do you have an answer for this? And God, help me. And this is what he says. In Habakkuk 3 and 17, he says, even though, he comes to this conclusion, even though the fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crops fails, and the fields lie empty and barren. Verse 18, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. Even though is a graduation in gratitude. It's a graduation. So instead of sitting here, if you got me, and I tried to sit on this chair last week, and I think I almost broke it, so I'm not going to try it. But if I sit here, this is awkward, this is weird, this isn't where I should be anymore. Because I'm older now. And I get to sit over here on the even though table. Now, the even though table isn't always fun, right? You got to cook. You got to clean. You got to take care of stuff. This is the even though table that can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, but it can also be very fulfilling and very rewarding. When I go to Thanksgiving and my mother-in-law cooks the best meal I've ever had, I'm grateful, but then we got to do dishes. Then we got to clean up. Then we got to do stuff. There's responsibility with the next stage in graduation, right? When you get your license, you got to have a little bit more responsibility. So when we learn to graduate in our gratitude, can we be grateful even though? You know, when we sit here, we can be going through trials, be going through difficult situations, and still be thankful, even though I'm out of work. Even though life has thrown me some curveballs, even though whatever is after that, right? We filled in the blank last week. For the. What are you thankful for the? But can we be thankful even though? In James chapter 1 and verse 2, he's saying this to us, and I've often referred to this scripture. And it's easy for me to read it, but it's another thing to actually live even though. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Consider it an opportunity for great joy. It goes on. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Now, I've read that, I've quoted it even recently. And I'm like, I don't really like that. Sometimes the even though table, let's just be honest, it stinks. It's not any fun. I don't love doing dishes. But if you don't do dishes, you can't eat on them again, right? Like the even though table, it produces patience. So what today is your or ours even though? We can be thankful easily when we've got the car or the job, just like that guy in the video, right? He's learning to be thankful for what he has, and sometimes we don't get that. So the for the is a must. We got to learn that, but we got to graduate from for the and maybe get to even though. And I don't know about you, but this week has been particularly heavy for me. And the fact that we got new restrictions on Sunday in every area of life now. This whole week has been this message being preached to me and to my soul, and I'm like challenged like I've never been before through this. Can I be thankful even though we have restrictions? Can I be thankful for what God's given us? Can I build on my for the and turn it into even though? Can I grow up? Can I graduate? Can I sit at the for or the even though table? Am I there yet? Can I be thankful, even though, like James said, can I look at my problems and say, because of that? You know, there's another guy in the Bible, David. He's one I admire. right? Many of you know David's story, a little bit about him. He's the guy who killed Goliath, went out to see his brothers, and took on amazing responsibility and did these incredible things. The whole book of Psalms is practically written by David. And he has ups and he has downs. And I love his authenticity, and I love who he is and what he represents. And he kind of preaches us this same message. And in Psalms, chapter 23, he says this. One of the greatest passages in all the Bible. Psalms 23. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Even though I'm in the most difficult season of my life, I believe, I trust, and I hold on to the fact that you're with me. And that this didn't take you off guard. And even though. See, the even though table says, God, I believe in my faith. I believe you're going to get me through this. I love Jason. I'm going to brag on him a little bit. Jason steps out. He knows God. He wants to work for God for his life. He wants to do something big for God. Steps out of a job, quits it all completely, and says, I'm going to learn to live in faith. I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from. I don't know where this is coming from. But he believes with all his heart that that's what God told him to do. And so he's going to step out and live by faith, even though I have questions. Even though I have doubts, even though I have frustrations, even though I have just questions, even though I'm going to trust you. And it's going to get better. It's going to get better. I believe in my faith. I believe in my God. This is the table right here is the table where we're thankful for what we see. We're thankful for what is in our eyes. And this is the table of faith. This is where we're thankful for what we don't see yet. This is the table where we're thankful that, God, you're going to come through. God, you're going to do something big in my life. This will pass. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to come on the other side because you're my God. You're my hope. You're my peace. You're my joy, just like we sang. He's the God of this nation. He's the hope for the hopeless. He's the peace to the restless. That's the God I serve. That's the God I see. Even though I sit at this table and I serve you, God. And my hope is in you. My hope is in you, even though it doesn't feel right. Even though it hurts. Even though, and even Jesus went through that. Even Jesus sat in the Garden of Gethsemane and prayed the prayer. Even though. But then he shifted and he says, God, not mine, but yours be done. And so there's not only a third position, but there's a place that we don't often get sometimes. And I'm still struggling with, I'll be even honest, I'm even struggling with even though. And I don't know if you've been there before where you face something that's difficult and then you look at it on the other side of it. So maybe you've gone through a divorce. Maybe you've gone through a bankruptcy. Maybe you've gone through a lost business or a lost job or a lost relationship. And then it's kind of come through. So you're at the even though table and you weren't thankful through it. I've been there. And then on the other side of it, you look back and you're like, I just wish I would have been thankful. Because that was hard. That was tough. But man, it made me better. It made me stronger. I just wish I would have looked at my problems different. I've been through that in relationships and in situations that Angie and I have faced throughout our life. I've walked through things and been like, man, I just wished I would have been thankful for it. I wished I would have treated that a little bit different. I wished I would have been able to trust you more, Jesus. Because you've always come through. You've always been faithful. You've never lost a battle. But in the middle of those battles, I struggle. I struggle like, God, maybe you didn't know. I shared with some of our leadership team this week. I said, because I've said it often, hey, this coronavirus did not take God by surprise. These new restrictions does not take God by surprise. Everything that's going on did not take God by surprise. But oftentimes, I was telling my wife the other day, I said, I think this one did. I think for some reason, COVID did take God by surprise. He wasn't prepared for this. This is not right? I struggle through even though. I don't know if you've been there. But if we can have good hindsight on the outside and say, okay, let's be more thankful even though I face trials. That's what James said to do. No matter what I face, even though I'm going to praise you and I'm going to worship you. But there's a third level, and David starts to express that. In the same Psalms, chapter 23 and verse 5, there's a third place. He says, you prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You prepare a table before me. Sabrina's going to prepare the table in the presence of our enemies. Now that's a third level, and there's a for the is what we see. Through the is by faith. And then there's a third table, and it's called because of. Because of. I'm going to be thankful because of. Not only is this situation, is it going to pass, and I'm going to get through it, but while I'm on the other side of whatever I'm going to face, I'm going to say, God, you're putting it here for a reason, and I'm going to be thankful because of it, and it's going to propel me to the next level. It's going to position me for prosperity. It's going to position me to be an influence. Look at what Paul says in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 12. I read this week, and it completely wrecked me. It completely changed my perspective on new restrictions and everything going on in our world right now. Completely changed it. Philippians chapter 1 and verse 12. It says, now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. Now he's in jail. He's in prison. Right? For preaching the gospel, he's been thrown in jail. And this is what he writes. This has happened to me to serve to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard. So everywhere in the jail, it's become clear, next verse, and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. And because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. Because of my chains, something amazing has happened. Because of me going through the darkness, God's done something, and he's saved countless of people through me going through that. Because of COVID, it has propelled Northbridge to do something amazing in our city. Because of whatever it is, because of the divorce, because of the bankruptcy, the lost relationship, the financial hardship, because of, God, you're going to teach me something, and I'm going to be stepped up my game, and something big's going to happen because of. Now that's a table, that's a place that is tough to get to. But I was encouraged this week that because of whatever it is we're facing, God knows what it has, but he has poised and he has put us here, each and every one of us, for such a time as this. God did not make a mistake by planting Northbridge when he did. God did not make a mistake by putting you right where you're at, whatever you're going through, in your relationship or your finances or your health. God did not make a mistake. Now, we make mistakes, but God knows about them. And God works them together for his good because of whatever you're facing, God can do something. I mean, can I shift my outlook? Can I shift the way I see whatever it is I'm facing as because of? That's another level. That's a doctorate when it comes to graduation. That's not just a high school degree or even a college degree. That's a doctorate. In learning to be thankful because of. My current circumstances aren't nearly as important as what I do with them. Right. What I'm facing is not nearly as important as how I react to them, as how I treat them, as how I go forward with them. Through the, like we said here, knows it's going to end and says, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to come out on the other side. But because of, man, that rejoices in it. That's why James can write, count it all joy when you face trials, because you can use it because of. Man, when we get there, when we get here, man, our graduation, we can move the tassel over, throw the hat, whatever you want to do with your hat in graduating. That's the place we want to get to be, where because of. Look at verse 18. Paul says, but what does it matter? The important thing that in every way, whether from false motives or true motives, Christ is preached. And because of this, I rejoice. Because of this, I rejoice. Our greatest struggles can be the source of our greatest comebacks, of our greatest lessons learned. You know, some of the most amazing inventions were born out of recessions. We're born out of hardships. We're born out of hard times. Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity when there was the bionic plague. Is that what it was or whatever? I think, what was it? Nice, whatever. Because they were in quarantine and he discovered the law of gravity. Many of the amazing things that we enjoy today were companies that were started in recessions. Netflix was founded in a recession. Airbnb was founded in a recession. Trader Joe's was founded in a recession. Microsoft was started in the middle of a recession. General Electric was. Disney actually started its company during the Great Depression. Some of the most amazing things that we take place in, that we enjoy, start in low times. And I believe that for Northbridge. And I believe that for your life. I believe that for whatever it is we're facing. In the midst of whatever it is, I'm going to shift my outlook and say, because of. Instead of pointing at other people, instead of pointing at the reasons how it could, should have, would have been, I'm going to look and say, because of that, we're going to be propelled to the next level. We have entered our finest season as the global church of America. I believe it with all my heart. I believe that we will do something big because of, in part because of COVID, because of what the enemy is trying to bring against us. And it will take some out, but it's not going to take Northbridge out. It's not going to take you out. Whatever it is in your life that you're facing, it's not going to take you out because we're grateful because of it. Years ago, Angie and I faced something difficult coming out of, we had moved from Spokane to Seattle, and we just kind of were in that transition life, right? Married a couple years and went through some stuff, and it was really good, but it was hard to be thankful because of. But somebody shared this scripture with us, and Paul, in 2 Corinthians, he talks about, which is kind of known as the thorn in his flesh. And it's an amazing, amazing passage, and it rocked our world, and it changed the way we looked at our situation. And look at this, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul is kind of preaching to everybody, and he's saying, I've got a lot figured out. I've got a good revelation, but I'm not going to boast in my revelations. I'm going to boast in my weakness. I'm going to boast in Jesus and not in that. And he comes to this conclusion. He says, even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God. Now, Paul's a legit dude, okay? Paul knows his stuff. He's like the Jew of all Jews. He's this amazing guy. He's done some pretty bad stuff. He murdered Christians, but he's got some amazing knowledge. So he's like, hey, God's given me some amazing revelations, but I'm not going to boast in that. He's being honest, and he's being forefront and saying, hey, I kind of got some things figured out, but I'm not going to boast in those. And even though I've received such amazing revelations from God, so to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a message from Satan to torment and keep me from becoming proud. Verse 8 goes on, and he says, 3 different times, I begged God to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So we look back and we can say, I'm thankful because of. God says, you don't get the glory, I do. You don't get the praise, I do. Paul goes on to say some of the words that just absolutely wrecked and changed mine and Angie's life. So now, I'm glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me. Verse 10. That's why, get this is beyond me. That's why I take pleasure in my weakness and in insults from other people, in restrictions from government. It doesn't say that, but hardships, persecutions, troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, God is glorified. When I struggle, when I fall short, when I mess up, when I screw up, when I do the wrong thing, when I screw up, I don't get glorified, God does. And it becomes more about who Jesus is on the inside of you than you. Because whether or not we like it, we're not by ourselves good enough to do anything. That's why Jesus had to come and die on a cross. And now we are righteous, we are whole, we are redeemed by him because we stand in Jesus. Because when we are weak, when we are weak, he is strong. So I can look back and I can say, because of the trial, because of the unfair situation, that's why he says hardships, right? He didn't deserve half the things that happened to him. He didn't deserve what went on, but because of, he was able to go to the next level. What can you look back in your life and say, because of this, I was made stronger? Right? If you've ever lifted weights, because you grew some muscles, because you went through some hard times, you went through some difficult seasons, you went through some things. I can't imagine what God is going to do for Northbridge and for us involved here in the next 5 years. And we'll say, remember when COVID was? And if we wouldn't have faced that, if we wouldn't have gone through that, we would not know what we know today. The difficulties and the frustrations and the angst that we face now, that you face now in your life, are nothing to what you're going to go through in a few years, and God needs you prepared. God needs you strong. God needs you ready to handle a new business, a new place to live, a new job, maybe a kid in your family. Whatever your situation is or is going to be, God needs you ready. So you go through what you're going through to make you strong, prepared, and ready. Now, don't hear me all this, that God does not send problems on your life. We do enough of that on our own, but God uses everything that we do and turns it around for his glory. And we can be thankful because of, and just like David, you prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You prepare a table in the middle of anger, in the middle of shame, in the middle of regret. I can sit here with them and say, you don't have to be a part of this family because you prepared a table, and I get to enjoy the goodness of God. I get to enjoy the grace of God, the love of God in the midst of that. In the midst of a world that is angry and frustrated, I get to enjoy because of what is going on. In the middle of it, I get to enjoy Jesus in the middle of shame trying to attack me. In the middle of worry and regret and fear trying to attack me, I get to say, nope, I'm enjoying Jesus because Jesus prepared a table for me in the midst of my enemies. That's being thankful because of. Man, I'm thankful today because of COVID. I'm thankful today because of the restrictions that our church, that my family has to go through right now because of, it's going to come out better, stronger, better, wiser, sharper, more blessed, more prosperous. We can help more and more and more people. Right? The need is greater than it ever is right now. And because of, we get to stand on him. And so I rejoice. This is what Paul said, right? I rejoice in trials, in troubles, in tribulations. Because of, it takes me to the next level, right? The graduation of gratitude is comes first. We're thankful for what we see. We're thankful for what we have. This is not only thankful for what we see, but this is God's provision. We are thankful for God's provision in our life. And through we're thankful for God's presence as we go about, as we walk through, as we do things with God. We're thankful even though we walk through the valley of the shadow. We're thankful for God's presence. We're thankful for God's provision first and foremost. That's the kiddie table. We're thankful for God's presence when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Right? I've referred to it a lot, but Romans 8:28 says this, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good. It goes on to say, for those who love him. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good. He doesn't say all things are good. He says he causes all things to work together, which is amazing because it doesn't mean that it all rests on me. It rests on God. So when I screw up, God works it together. Right? He's cooking in the kitchen. He's saying, I'm going to take some of your flaws. I'm going to take some of your mistakes. I'm going to take all your shortcomings. I'm going to put them in a bowl, and I'm going to prepare a table for you in the midst of your enemies, even with your shortcomings, your mistakes, your trials. Trust me, I knew about all this, God says. And I'm making you the right meal so you can enjoy it and sit at the table, even though it turns into because of, and that's God's purpose for our life. We can be thankful because God's purpose for our life has laid out for us before the foundations of the earth. God knew me and you. He knew what we would face. He knew the bad choices we would make. He knew the good choices we would make. He knew when we would stand up, when we would sit down, and when we would mess up. But God still said, my purpose is to bless you, is to love you, and is to die on a cross for you because you are already God's righteous, and I believe in you. You can be thankful because of what we go through. I want to pray with you.